That's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Hello, and welcome to episode 23 of PvA Radio. I am one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me, as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellor-Klein. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. Are you wearing a turtleneck?
I'm wearing a sweater because I got back from work and I was wearing a sweater at work.
Oh, okay. It looked like a turtleneck for just a split second, but it is not. It is
Just a normal sweater.
Yeah, okay. All right. Also joining us, he believes the French press is the superior way to make coffee, Larry Hunt.
Guilty.
Every Saturday, right?
Every Saturday when I'm not doing some kind of work-related thing.
So every other Saturday.
One Saturday a month.
I have to agree. You've been all around the world, don't speak the language, but the booty don't need explaining. All you really need is to drink coffee out of the French press, right?
Correct.
No.
That's mostly correct. There's a lot of that I didn't follow.
I don't think Luke followed it.
No, I didn't. It fell apart. It unraveled by the end. All right. This is PvA Radio. We get together every week. Each of us brings one of the biggest stories in gaming news to the table, and then we have an in-depth discussion about it. It's a collaborative audio feature article, your CAFA, if you will. Get that tattooed on your body somewhere. We have a jam-packed show today. A lot of big news in the gaming world for the really kind of like first official week back for gaming.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to jump into it. But before we do that, a little bit of housekeeping. We are on podcast services everywhere. New episodes going up every Tuesday. You may be like, well, Luke, the new episode didn't go up on Tuesday this week. That is maybe because I let my card that had recently expired lapse on our Podbean account, and I didn't realize it, and so I had to go in and update it. So all is well. We are back. We are back on the air, and then we're also over on YouTube. Just search PvA Radio. We will be live streaming at some point. We're just trying to get it all navigated. It's not as easy as everybody just comes to my house. We point a webcam at ourselves and go live. I've got systems to figure out here. We're hoping to set aside some time this week. So go follow us, twitch.tv/PvA Radio, and you'll know if we go live at 9 o'clock next Monday, which is the goal. All right? All right. Fantastic. Let's get the show started with what have you been playing? Cody, what have you been playing?
To be honest, I haven't been playing that much. Work has been a little bit busy, but I've been playing a little bit of Blackout, and then I finished Thronebreaker. And the one thing I will say, because I'm going to keep this short because I didn't play that much, but you really don't realize how much you miss something until it's gone. And I didn't realize how much I missed Geralt as a character until he popped up for about 15 seconds in Thronebreaker. There's just something, I think, I haven't played The Witcher in a long time, but I sunk so much time into that game that his voice just kind of sometimes rings residually in my head. And I don't know. I love the way that Doug Cockle performs that character, and I love the writing of that character. Someone who could be easily just a stereotypical badass, fantasy badass, a little bit more complex. And I didn't really realize how much I missed him until I heard his dulcet tones in Thronebreaker for a little bit.
So you've decided you're going to jump headlong into Soul Calibur now?
Yeah, probably Soul Calibur, and then I'll get back to Monster Hunter World because he's popping up in everything.
He's all around the world. You don't speak the language.
Exactly.
All right. Is that all you've been playing?
Pretty much, yeah.
All right. Larry, I see you have an extensive list here.
Yes, it's possible I forgot to fill this part of the show notes in. But I know what I've been playing.
All right.
Been playing some Overwatch, of course. And I'm so glad that they're changing the meta. And I know Reaper's about to be super overpowered, but I don't care. I will take literally any new meta at this point. Give me the nobody does any damage except healers meta. I will take that over the nonstop bashes. Whatever it takes.
Are we not currently in the supports do nonstop damage meta right now?
I don't feel like we
Doesn't
are.
Brigida just get in there and flail everywhere?
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. And Zen's basically a sniper.
Yeah. when Ben's playing, yeah.
Yeah, our friend Ben, like, the first time he did it, I laughed because I thought it was a joke, but I've seen him do it multiple times. The enemy team will bring a Pharah in, and he, as Zen, will say, don't worry, I've got it. And I'll laugh at him, but sure enough, he'll check that Pharah as Zen.
Every single time. I do want to talk, and maybe it'll be a good topic when the patch goes live, but about some of the meta changes. But I'm worried it's too nerdy for what we're doing. Like, it's too in the weeds of Overwatch for what we do at this show. But
People can just
I'm right
skip
there
it.
with you. What's that?
They can just skip the topic. Go to the next one.
That's true. We'll timestamp it. I just know when we were doing the Player 3 podcast, when we'd get like in the weeds about Overwatch, we would just watch our live stream numbers slowly dwindle down. All right.
And I've also been playing Smash Brothers still. I'm so glad to be playing Smash Brothers again. I love it.
Feels good.
So, did you take your Switch on your youth trip you went on this weekend?
Absolutely not. I'm not taking that anywhere near these kids.
See, that's the problem with youth ministry. It's like you get this cool thing that's designed to be able to go with you anywhere, but yet you don't take it because it's like either it's going to get swiped by sticky fingers or made sticky by sticky fingers.
Yep.
So,
And I made my kids suffer on the van rides. I banned all electronics for the long van rides and forced them to learn how to socialize. They hated me, but they're welcome.
look, the way that this generation socializes is via their electronic devices.
Not this weekend, it wasn't.
All right. So I have been playing massive amounts of Overwatch. If all of you in the podcast verse out there will just close your eyes wherever you're at, all right? If you're driving down the road, just close them. And say a quick little prayer for me because I played no less than 20 hours of quick play, solo queue quick
Good
play
Lord.
of Overwatch this weekend trying to grind my account to 25. It was horrible.
Did it get bad enough at some point that you vomited from the suffering?
I would just like finish a match, get up, and just like take a couple laps around the house.
I loved your Tales from Gold tweet where the Orisa set his shield right up against the wall and said that was where all the pros put it.
I was like, you
laughed
don't
out loud
understand
at
who
that.
you're talking to here, man. I was telling Cody, I watched every single match of the first season of Overwatch League. I jumped in stage 2, went back and watched stage 1. like it was fucking True Detective. And I've never seen anyone place their shield there for any amount of time. So I was a little blown away when he said that to me.
It's almost like a main tank should take space. I don't know.
It's almost like if you have a shield, it's probably good if other people can stand behind the shield. It seems foreign
doesn't benefit
as
me
the
enough.
as the listener numbers are
Just dropping.
But yeah, so I've been playing Overwatch. I've been also watching a ton of Overwatch. We're in the playoffs for Overwatch contenders, and so there's a problem with professional Overwatch, both at the Overwatch League level and in the contenders level, just in that there is very little parity. There is just a lot of 4-0s, just clear teams that are better in the playoffs. There were some exciting matchups, but all in all, it's just been there are clear winners, clear losers, clear teams that are massively better. And but I just love it all the same. And so today, guys, is January 14th, right? January, the first month of the year. Does anybody know what the second month of the year is?
February.
February, all right, with 2 R's in it. That is next month, which means 1 month from today is the start of Overwatch League. All right?
Nice.
Start
Screw
the countdown.
Valentine's Day. No one cares about that, all right? I will be home that night watching every single Overwatch League match. So
The most
we
romantic thing you can do.
Lauren and I don't do Valentine's Day, and it's really working out for us this year. So. All right. Guys, let's jump into it. You ready?
All right. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Oh man, can I force something in here?
Is it about Fallout?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
We don't have to. Okay, we'll save it for next week.
No. You've already done it.
The viewer numbers are ticking up now that we're talking about
Yeah,
Fallout.
they're like Fallout.
That's
How'd they
my
fuck
goal.
us over this week?
So some more Fallout. Did you guys see the most recent thing where they what's the room called? I'm not prepared for this. I'm just realizing that I forgot to crap on Fallout this week.
I don't know what room you're talking about either.
Have you not seen this?
No.
Oh, okay. So give me one moment. Distract the viewers quick.
I got you. This segment brought to you by Comcast. If you want real customer service, switch to Comcast. Xfinity Blast Internet. Use coupon code PvA Radio for 45% added to your next bill.
All right, I'm ready.
Nice. Effective.
I just processed all of that.
Look, we need to start a demo reel for getting ad reads onto this podcast, and we just need to cut that out and send it to all potential sponsors. They're going to be like, well, that was almost flawless.
I think that once we have sponsors, we should do the ads like Tannis and the Black Tapes, like in universe, and the listeners are like, "This isn't even a story podcast. What's happening?"
I was
right
going to
now?
say, isn't the PvA Radio universe just this universe?
No, it's its own cinematic universe, the PvACU.
Yeah.
No, guys, in the real world, Fallout 76 is a great game.
So there's a secret developer room in Fallout 76, which, I'm not a game designer, but from what I've been reading, this should not be something that users were able to access, but users were able to access it. And inside was an NPC named Wooby who could talk. And if you kill him and take his stuff, as most users were prone to do, he had a lot of really high level weapons that hadn't been released yet, that sort of thing. Because the developers room is where they're testing out the new stuff, So these people were going in and getting a bunch of stuff they shouldn't have had and carrying it back out into the main Fallout 76 world and using said stuff. And Bethesda got real pissed off about this and banned everybody who went into that secret room. and I get it. They shouldn't be using those weapons, but it's not their fault that you left the door open.
Yeah, I'm ill prepared for this story because this is the first time ever hearing of it. But my first thought is, if this room isn't designed to be accessed and these weapons aren't ready to be pushed live, how are they accessible on a live server?
I don't understand enough to answer that. Just wanted to give you the quick Fallout update.
It wouldn't be PvA Radio without this segment. Brought to you by Comcast.
Commicast.
Ingenuitive. That's an old Player 3 podcast joke. All right. Well, that's enough of that. Unless Cody has some insight there. You know anything about this developer room?
I have no idea. It's the first time I've heard of it. But it's not the first time that I've heard of something like this. It's just weird that it's live. I guess it might be different if you're working on a live game, but a lot of developers kind of have backdoor stuff like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He keeps freezing, so I don't know if he's still trying to talk. But
no, I just said that a lot of developers have things like this during the development process, but it doesn't necessarily go live. It might be different if you're working on a live game, but I'm not sure.
It's one of those stories that's you feel like it could be one of those things that they do just for the publicity until you get to the end and then they ban everybody that accessed it. It's this would be a pretty cool story if it was just, we stumbled upon this room, it's got all these overpowered weapons, we killed the guy, Bethesda realizes it closes the door. That's a cool story, but then they just got to go and be we're going to ban everybody and make them write an essay or something.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the running theme with this train wreck. There are lots of places where the train begins to go off the rails, but it's okay. And Bethesda's no, it's not. This thing's going off.
In this post-apocalyptic world, no trains take you to your destination. All right? All right. Let's move on. That's the last time we're mentioning Fallout this podcast. Challenge accepted.
New stuff next week.
All right. My topic. Slightly Mad Studios has announced they will be releasing a standalone console in the coming years. So, this is a super interesting story to me. I'm a hardware guy. Like, I'm not a hardware guy necessarily. I'm an industry guy, and like how all these things kind of come together to make up this video game industry. And to me, this story is just very, very strange. So I'm actually going to read from Jordan Ramey's story over here on GameSpot. It says, Slightly Mad Studios CEO Ian Bell has revealed the company is developing a standalone console. Exact hardware and software specs haven't been announced yet, but Bell has provided a few details. The first mention of the console came via Twitter when Bell tweeted, quote, "The Mad Box is coming," end quote. Bell told Variety that the Mad Box will probably release in about 3 years and support up to 120 frames per second for virtual reality play. Quote, "It will support most major VR headsets and those upcoming, and the specs will be equivalent to a very fast PC 2 years from now," end quote, Bell wrote. Quote, "We're in early talks with manufacturers of components, so we can't say much more right now, other than we have the designs spec'd out in detail," end quote. This part, I'll come back to the next part, but so I think we all, like last week we talked, we set our predictions out for the PS5 and the Xbox One too. So we're at a phase where we know that there are new consoles coming out on the horizon. Did anyone, before I put this story in or before you saw this story this week, think, man, either A, we're going to see Slightly Mad Studios enter this game, or even B, we're going to see another next generation console announced?
Well, I think the writing's been on the wall for years that Slightly Mad was going to drop a new console. No, I did not.
and just so people are aware, these are the people who help make Project Cars in a lot of the Need for Speed series. So it's basically just going to be a car that plays video games.
Nice. That's what we all wanted, right?
Yeah, seriously. I guess in talking about this, I think we would all agree we're probably in a healthier place now for the video game industry than we've ever been before. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think that's debatable, right?
No.
Right.
But with this healthy market, obviously there's going to be players that want a piece of the pie. But do you think there's even space for a fourth? I don't want to say major console, but obviously that's probably what they're aspiring to be, is a major console. Like, is there even space in the market for that?
In one sense, I think not, but in another sense, I don't feel like there's room for us to have a fourth majorly successful console. But I am curious to see if this can disrupt the market and maybe knock one of the other players out of the game. Particularly with the quality, the power that they're talking about having. If that pans out, if that's actually true, I'll be real interested to see what happens.
Yeah, I think this might be getting at another one of your questions, but I guess it depends on what niche they hope to hit or what role they see their console fulfilling. I don't know if this is the best time or the worst time to try this, to be honest. Mm-hmm. It's probably a little bit of both. I don't know if they've ever heard of the Ouya.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
But that might be something that's analogous to what they're trying to do, although obviously that didn't have nearly the power that they're claiming their console will have. But I don't know if Valve, a company with seemingly all the money in the world and a successful platform, couldn't really get their console off the ground, I don't know if these guys can. And I don't know if the specs that they're proclaiming loudly from the rooftop, I don't know if that's enough to draw people. I don't know. I guess I should rephrase that. I don't know if it would draw enough people away from the console alignment that they already have to even earn enough money.
Yeah, there's a couple things I find really, really interesting about this story. The first is, and you just kind of touched on this, but while I think there's dollars to be made in the video game industry, kind of on all fronts, both hardware, software, services, everywhere. I'm not sure if now is the right time to release hardware in this kind of space because people have chosen their camps. And, if people play on console, they're either playing on PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo. And if they're in one of those markets, they're probably not super displeased with the product that they have, right? And so I think in order for a product to be really successful, it needs to do a couple things. I think the first thing that it needs to do is address an issue that the market is currently suffering from and has no solution to. And I just don't know what that problem is in the current market. And then the second thing it needs to do is just really be able to differentiate itself. And I think with the little bit of detail that we've gotten about this console, it's trying to, but I think it's interesting where they've decided to try to stake their claim with it being really heavily focused on messaging for virtual reality.
Yeah.
When we're kind of in a place where I don't want to say virtual reality hasn't been successful, because I think there's been some positive signs coming out of especially like PSVR. Yeah. But outside of that, like Microsoft doesn't want to even really touch the VR space. They've backed away from a lot of the language there. I think the Vive has been underwhelming in terms of its reception and sales, maybe due to the fact that it takes such powerful hardware to run it. But and then Oculus, kind of not the same thing as Vive, but it just still hasn't gained that foothold really in a way that I think a lot of people were expecting it to take hold in the last 3 or 4 years. So I think it's interesting that the initial messaging is all kind of around not PlayStation, all around this VR that is still really unproven. And I don't think enough of a differentiator to say like, hey, we're going to be the premium place to have console VR experiences. I don't know who's clamoring for that.
Yeah, I think both ways that they're trying to pitch this console seem like it's hitting a pretty small niche audience. Like, I think PSVR last year sold relatively well. I think it sold like 2 million units or something. But compared to the amount of PlayStations that were sold, that's minuscule. It's just not moving units for Sony. So yeah, I agree that it's an interesting tactic to go after that space, especially seeing as with every other VR developer and publisher, it seems like it's stalled overall. I wouldn't say VR has failed. I think it's certainly stalled. And people's expectations, I think, were slightly raised for the future of gaming with VR. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure who they're going after is worth going after if they want to really invest in this space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to kind of go the same direction, that the thing they're trying to answer is people that want VR. But again, it's not a huge group. But I am curious because it seems like they're trying to deliver a much higher quality VR experience. And maybe if they do that and they can draw the developers to produce full games for it, that would be maybe they've got a shot. But I do think it's a really risky endeavor they're taking.
And I'm kind of purposely staying away from the second half of the story to get to here in a minute. But just to come back to the original quote from Ian Bell, where I feel like there's just a lot of babble in it, where he's like saying things, but he's not really saying anything. And where he's like, the specs will be equivalent to a very fast PC 2 years from now. And that's never how console development has been, because consoles need to be A, reliable, and then they need to be B, affordable. And it's never really been a thing with consoles where they're like, we're like kind of future proofing our development, our R&D of this console, because the costs just get super inflated at that point. So to claim that, I don't think even console makers come out of the gate and try to compare themselves to like current high-powered PCs at the time of their release. So to be like, this is going to be the equivalent of a very powerful PC or a very fast PC 2 years from now, I just think is like, it's a non-starter for me because it just doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah. And that's why when I was answering earlier, I said if these specs pan out, because a lot of it, A, it wasn't specific, and B, it just doesn't seem believable to me. Mm-hmm. And if it is believable, what's the price tag going to be?
Yeah. So they also released an initial design for this thing, and I just want to say, this is the ugliest console I've ever seen in my entire life. So I am very sad that we're not live streaming this week, so you can't see it. But
Google it.
Yeah, you can Google it. It's called the Mad Box. But it basically looks like a 1960s style female cartoon mother. Like if you're looking at it, it's got and you look at the sides like the hair, and then it goes out and kind of curls up at the end. Like it has a very cartoon female look to me, but it's a weird ass looking console.
The colors aren't great either.
Yeah, it's like this weird orange and black, which I'm a big orange fan, but this just like, I don't know. I hate having to do stuff like this on an audio podcast where people can't see it, but it kind of looks like they're trying to straddle that line between a PC and a console and failing at it.
It looks like what people would envision the future of gaming would look like in the early 2000s.
Yeah. I feel like I'm looking at a physical embodiment of the original Xbox's home screen, whatever that was called back in the day.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
See, I actually don't mind. I kind of like that it's different. It is ugly, but I do like that it's different. But it leads me to take issue with the name of it. So before I saw the image, I was like, Madbox? Like, you got an Xbox out there, you couldn't think of like a name that didn't have the word box. I don't know. Like,
ooh, yeah.
But I guess they have to be box shaped. So, and then when I saw the picture of it, I was like, it's not box shaped. Why? Why did you call it the Mad Box?
It is shaped like an M though, which is the first letter of the word Mad Box.
That's true.
The marketing and branding on point already. All right, let's jump into what I think is an interesting and damnable paragraph here. When this is still from that GameSpot article. It reads, when it comes to games on the console, Bell wrote, quote, "We think exclusives are exclusionary." But given that we'll be shipping a cross-platform engine to all developers, it will be their choice. As of now, we have no plans to pay developers incentives to exclude other hardware vendors, end quote. He further explained that Slightly Mad Studios thinks, quote, "The industry is a little too much of a monopoly or a micro oligopoly," end quote. Now we're just making shit up.
Killing it. Absolutely killing it.
And the Mad Box aims to bring some healthy competition to the console race, which for years has pretty much exclusively been a three-way battle between Microsoft's Xbox, Sony's PlayStation, and Nintendo's hardware. All right, guys, just pick that paragraph apart for me.
Exclusives are exclusionary. Yes, that is what exclusive means.
I guess according to their definition, Sony is extremely unsuccessful.
Yeah, seriously.
Because that's literally all you have to look to realize that the point they're making is completely wrong.
And a big part of Xbox's failure to compete with the PlayStation this generation was its lack of exclusives.
Exactly.
Because if I can get a bunch of games on one system that I can't get on the other, and the other only offers games that I can get on both, then why would I spend my money on on the one that does not have exclusives?
And what has Xbox been doing the last year?
Yeah,
acquiring studios. Like, and this is where the rubber meets the road on this thing, because the economy of video games for hardware developers is that your hardware is not profitable for the first at least couple years that it's on the market. Now, there are exceptions to that. I believe PlayStation 4 is an exception to that rule. But for the most part, you expect to sell your consoles at a loss for at least a short term at the beginning of a console generation, and that it is the software sales that make up the difference here. So we're kind of at this. The more you read into the story and the more you look at it, you think they just found somebody at CES who was like drunk and homeless on the side of the road and asked him for an interview about the future of video games, and he gave this interview, and then they were like, can you draw us a picture of the console that is in your mind right now? And that is the picture of the mock-ups that GameSpot published in an article later that day, because it is going totally counter to every lesson that has been learned in the hardware space over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And so you have someone who is saying we are going to release a super powerful console that is affordable, and yet we are not going to have any exclusive games on it. Because another thing that we know is that if you have super powerful hardware, but your competitors don't have quite as powerful hardware, it is going to hamstring the games that are being developed for years, especially when it's going to make up a fraction of the market at the end of the day. You're not going to have developers producing games that look stellar, run stellar, and take advantage of the power of your hardware here, unless you're giving them incentives to come over. And it's just like, has this guy even been in the video game industry at all in the last, or read a single video game article or listened to a single podcast? Like, I don't know. It just seems so ass backwards to me.
Yep. I didn't feel good about this when I read it, and the more we talk about it, the worse I feel about it.
Yeah, it really, I mean, it does read like they're misinterpreting what the idea of a disruptor in an industry is. It's like a really, really spot on episode of Silicon Valley. Like they're really not taking the temperature in the room. They're pitching an idea that is completely runs, as you said, completely counter to everything in the industry and everything that's happened in the industry over the past generation. I don't know what this thing is going to look like if it ever comes out. I don't know if it ever will come out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
It just looks like it would be
I'm
dead
in
on
the
arrival.
boat of. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm with you, and I think I'm in the boat of I don't think this will ever actually release, at least not as it's been described.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this just as a fun thought exercise, and I think I put it in the show notes, but if there were to be a fourth console player coming into the market, what would it have to do in order to be that disruptor? Like, not the shadow of a disruptor that the Mad Box is hoping to be, but to actually disrupt the industry and really shake things up and be seen as a competitor alongside these. Because I think even if this comes to market, we're not going to ever view it as a competitor, given the philosophy that's been laid out already.
It's a good question. I mean, there are people working day and night in boardrooms, I'm sure, to figure out this question. So I doubt we'll think of anything that would actually. It's so difficult because we're so set, we're so aware of what is normal in the industry at this point that it's difficult to even consider what would be aberrant or abnormal in an industry that could work. Like, Nintendo's not a disruptor by any means; they're a major player, but the Switch definitely did something different, and it did it well that people obviously were clamoring for. I don't think people realized how much they wanted a hybrid console until Nintendo showed it to them. But they're not a disruptor by any stretch of the word. It's just a disruptive idea.
But I don't think their size excludes them from being a disruptor. I mean, I think Nintendo in the hardware space has been a disruptor for generations now.
I think there's a difference between disruptor and innovator. And I think Nintendo falls into the latter category.
I don't know, man. I look at like the Wii. The Wii was definitely a disruptive system. It wasn't. wasn't. I mean, it was innovative. It had no longevity behind it. But think about the projects that it forced Microsoft and Sony to undertake to try to catch back up with both the Move and the Kinect. You know, trying to bring motion controls because the Wii was so successful. Like, I think that is the definition of a disruptor. Like, it came in and shook up the market in such a way that it made everybody change the way that they do the game. And I think you could argue the Wii was really a forerunner for virtual reality in a lot of ways. Like, the Move was developed. The Move is a tentpole of the VR experience. Like, the kind of full body interactive game idea was. It wasn't started by the Wii, but it was popularized and not perfected, but made better. You know, so I think we're straying away from the question, but I think there are things out there to be done, and I think the Switch, we haven't seen all the ripples from the Switch yet.
Yeah,
you know, and I think that
a lot left to that story.
I would imagine at least one of the other major players is doing something in the handheld space. And I would venture to guess it's Sony.
Yeah.
And I think that it will be wholly because of the Switch. And I think a disruptor is just anyone who makes a move so drastic and impactful that it forces players to rethink the way that they're doing things. Yeah. And I think Nintendo has done a better job at that than really anybody. And Sony's like an opposite of a disruptor. Like, Sony is a we're going to continue to do things the way that they've always been done, but just do them better.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and they found a lot of success in that. And it's really the reason that Xbox has been left out in the cold this console generation is because they failed to be a disruptor with a lot of the different entertainment section stuff that they tried to push into their console. And yet they didn't really get the fundamentals right either within their system from the outset.
It's a good question, though.
As far as what a console could do to find a market, I do think that this one's on the right track. If they could pull off VR well enough that VR was great this go around. Obviously, far better than any VR we've ever tasted. But it was still, you didn't have great graphics. You had that weird screen door effect. It was very immersive, but it could be done better. If they could produce a console that could pull off like the holy grail, the VR experiences that we get from sci-fi movies, I think that could be a big enough deal that they would find a market. But it would have to be a big step up.
Yeah, and they would have to also be producing their own virtual reality hardware, which is something that they haven't hinted at. Everything what I read when I read this is that they're just creating a mid-tier PC that you can hook up a Vive or Oculus to, and it's like... Yeah. Those technologies have been explored already, not necessarily to the fullest of their potential, but there are PCs out there that are going to be able to run better than the Madbox. And so if they were to come out and say, like, here's this virtual or augmented reality experience that's totally different, like that could be a differentiator. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not confident they'll pull that off, but I think that's what could be done.
I still think I have so many reservations about VR as a technology and VR as an experience. I think there are a lot of people, at least at this point in the industry, that VR is an experience that's worth having maybe once or twice, and then they just kind of forget about it. I think there are barriers for a lot of people in terms of how much you can enjoy an experience in VR, like physically in terms of the way the headset sits on your head and feels for an extended period of time, or how you react to motion blurring and how you react to, I know a lot of my friends get motion sickness in VR, which can be dialed back if people kind of hone in on the technology, but there are a lot of barriers that I still see to VR that I don't know will be overcome, at least in the near future.
Yeah. We did a stream one time where I played Resident Evil, and I had to quit because of motion sickness. Yeah. And I'm somebody who does not get motion sick in real life. Like, I'll be in line for the tilt-a-whirl, eating a funnel cake, and be fine. But VR, it messes me up.
One thing I would like to see is a console that acts as like a streaming hub in your house. So you have a console box. Everything is housed within the console, right? All the processing power, everything. So nothing cloud-based there. But what it allows me to do is purchase hubs that I can place throughout my house, and I don't have to move my console between rooms in order to play games on it. It just uses like my main console as a server, basically, like a cloud platform to be able to play it on. That because I was thinking, like, if I was in one of those boardrooms, I had to toss out some ideas. Like that would be one. I don't want to because I just got set up in my new gaming room. I got a new monitor. It's awesome. But there are still times where I'd love to like go out and play Red Dead Redemption on my big TV, but I don't want to drag my console out there, right? But
Yeah.
if I can do Direct TV, you get your one set top box, and then they've got those little like satellite boxes you put everywhere else that connects to it. If they could do something like that, bring that into the home where you can just create a network of consoles in your home and play them anywhere, I would buy that.
And this may be very silly, but an innovation I'd like to see in the hybrid console space would be, it's cool that you can prop the Switch up and play games with your friends, but it's still that tiny little screen. I think it would be awesome to see one that had managed to build in a high quality projector, and the screen is wherever you can find a blank wall. I think that would be a really cool thing.
I can guarantee you Nintendo is thinking about that right now.
Well, there is a Switch projector that you can buy.
I did not know
Isn't
this.
it's not that great, though, I heard.
I've never read reviews on it. I've just seen the videos for it, but it's just a dock that when you place it into it, it projects it. But the thing is like nobody's doing their main gaming on that thing. It's one of those things you just like take to a party and hook it up.
Yeah.
Or take to a youth event.
but that's the space where I find the bigger screen more important. Like, I'm fine to play by myself on a tiny screen, but getting together with friends, that's where I need the bigger screen to split up and lose at Mario Kart.
Yeah. Yeah. All in all, I don't think there's a company that's going to be able to produce something. Cody, did you have any ideas you wanted to give out for free to investors?
I keep all my ideas to myself. I do think it would be someone. I think it would be a new player, though, not like a new player in the industry, but someone we wouldn't expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think you're right in that Sony and Microsoft are comfortable where they are doing what they're doing. Well, Microsoft needs to be doing more, and they will be doing more. But Sony has no reason to really do anything but do what it's doing, but better. Nintendo is a constant in that it's constantly befuddling and constantly weird. So whatever they end up doing next will be, like everything else they've done, a miraculous success or miraculous failure.
Mm-hmm. So look for Ubisoft to drop the Animus next generation.
Ubisoft teamed with Epic. They'll do it.
All right. Larry.
What?
What's your topic?
What? This news really excited me this week. So Destiny and Activision are parting ways, and as they part ways, Destiny is going to maintain all the rights to Destiny. And there are articles written about this, but all in all, that's all we know. So I want to look at what this means for the future of Destiny, the future of Bungie. But before we get to that, over the course of Destiny, there's been this tendency to assume that anything slimy that was done in regards to this game, microtransactions, that sort of thing, was Activision, and the release schedule was Activision, and Bungie only does all the good things. Do you think that this is a fair assessment or not a fair assessment?
I mean, it's obviously not a fair assessment. Do I think that there were creative differences? Yes. Do I think that there were possibly things that were put into the game because Activision has seen success in other properties that maybe they kind of forced Bungie's hand on? Yes. But I think that there were a lot of other things about this game that were less than ideal, going all the way back to Vanilla Destiny's release, that probably had nothing to do with Activision. you know. And this isn't the first time that Bungie has taken issue with the company that is over them and responsible for their publishing. From the outset of this, I think that we were kind of promised a different relationship between Destiny and Activision than has been seen generally between like publisher and developer. But I don't think we've seen that pan out either. In terms of how it's interacted, it has really felt like a publisher kind of dictating some things here and there. But all in all, I just, as with everything in life, plenty of blame to be passed around among all people. And I just, everybody's singing "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead" about this thing. It's just completely and utterly delusional about how these things actually work.
Yeah. At the same time, I do think they, especially the employees at Bungie, have a right to be celebrating. Clearly, that was a somewhat toxic relationship. I think it's probably fair to say that. But yeah, there's definitely blame to be put on both sides. There are definitely predatory monetary tactics that were implemented in Destiny that could probably be put at the feet of both Activision and Bungie, although I think Bungie would be less inclined to do that. But I also think there are things that were fundamentally wrong with those games that were very much to do with Bungie's design, vision, and Bungie's failure to learn how to launch one of these games. So I think there's certainly blame to be put at the feet of both companies. At the end of the day, these are both large corporations that are trying to earn money. Bungie is obviously still somehow has a lot of good faith in the eyes of gamers. I wouldn't say not without good reason. But yeah, I think I do firmly land in the camp that I think this is better for both Activision and for Bungie, because they clearly had different visions of what this franchise should be. And it does give me a little hope for the future of Destiny and for Bungie, which I believe we'll probably be talking about in a bit. But I think there were things that were happening on both sides that were problematic here.
Yeah, I think sorry, Larry, just one more point.
You're good. Go on.
I think from a creative standpoint, yes, this is better for Bungie. It's going to give them more freedom to do things the way that they want them to do. However, I do think there's a negative side to this, where Activision was kind of this scapegoat in a lot of ways for mistakes that have been made. And when shit hit the fan, people had a tendency to look at Activision and think they were the reason for it. And that buffer has now been removed. And the expectations now, like you thought Destiny 1 expectation levels were high. Like I think whatever they do next, expectation levels are going to be through the roof. And if they don't deliver fully on it, there's no buffer that exists there anymore to take the brunt of that. And so, is that fair? No. Is it the reality of the way that these things tend to go? Absolutely.
I think Bungie did eat a lot of shit, though, for Destiny.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to say, no, they did. But I just think for a lot of people, it was easy to justify some of the things that were wrong.
Oh,
just being
100%.
Like,
yeah, they succeed.
Activision.
They succeed and fail on their own now.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of things where people would be like, classic Activision. Why did Bungie pair up with them? As though Bungie was just like the poor innocent. Yeah, I'm with you guys. There's blame on both sides. And what you said, Luke, kind of gets to the point that I was going to make. Whether it's accurate or not, I think Bungie is really going to benefit in the PR standpoint from their splitting from Activision. People are going to have that excitement. Oh, now we get Destiny pure, not Destiny corrupted by Activision's evil influence. But they better do it right, because from here on out, whatever happens, it's Bungie.
Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a perfectly played ball on both sides too, for Activision to be like, we're going to let you walk away with complete total publishing rights for this game, when they probably had a contractual right to say, we retain this IP. Like, kind of perfectly played by Activision too, to just let them walk free, because I don't think either party was happy within this. I mean, we've seen all the rumors of calls from Activision stakeholders where they talked about Destiny underperforming and disappointing, and so I think there was some I mean, there was certainly tension, but I think for Activision, letting them go was a sigh of relief. But I think it'd have been a bad play for them to be like, well, we're letting Bungie go, but we're retaining the rights to Destiny, and we're going to put our own team together, blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah.
kudos to Activision for somehow navigating these really strange waters in a way that I think somehow makes them look better too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I saw a tweet that confused me, and I can't remember. I read a lot of tweets on this. I need to start like saving pertinent tweets to reference. So I can't remember who said this, but there was someone who was talking about all the excitement people have about Bungie moving forward without Activision, and they referenced the fact this happened back in 2007 when Bungie parted ways with Microsoft and maintained the rights to well, scratch that. Sorry, Microsoft did retain the rights to Halo, but Bungie kind of had a lot more say over what was happening with Halo. And someone referenced this as, now don't get too excited, because remember, Bungie did this back in the day with Microsoft back in 2007. And I wasn't sure why they used that as a don't get too excited moment, because what followed Halo 3, you had ODST, which was disappointing to some, but I think that was a mistake in marketing more than anything. But then after that, you had Halo Reach, which, according to 343 Industries, is the favorite Halo game among Halo fans. So I don't know. Am I missing something?
I think it was more that
my
they
question
then went
about.
on to partner with Activision, and the same thing happened again.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, so let's move to the meat of it then. In a broad sense, what do you think this means for the future of Destiny? What can we expect Bungie to do with that, and what does it mean for the future of Bungie?
I think in order for Destiny to continue to deliver on this vision that Bungie has for it, like, the money has to come from somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Activision was bankrolling this thing for them. And I mean, Destiny was selling, obviously, but there were microtransactions. There was like a really aggressive expansion schedule that was having to be maintained in order to fund this thing. Like, I don't think it's just clear waters from here. I don't know. I'm more pessimistic about this than a lot of people, just because it's like they're going to have to get into bed with somebody in order to finance this, right?
Or they'll just be a massive independent studio.
But even then, it's like, where's the money coming from?
I do think they're going to have to partner with someone.
Yeah. And who are the players big enough to?
Well, people have been pointing. People have been pointing to Epic just because of its increasingly dominant role, but that's not going to happen because they're not in the publishing game. I mean, they are in the publishing game, but for their own shit. I don't know. Well, they're two. The future of. If we're going to talk about the future of Destiny, I think there are two things to address here. Because there's the future of Destiny 2, and then there's the future of whatever Destiny will be after that. And the future of Destiny 2 is very dim for people who are still playing that game. There's a great piece published on Polygon today, an opinion piece about what this deal means for the future of Destiny 2. Bungie has said it will complete its obligations as it has now. I think there are two more content updates, major content updates coming to Destiny 2. But beyond that, we don't know what will happen. Beyond that, you presume Bungie will probably distance itself from Destiny 2 and move on to whatever Destiny 3 or whatever the next major Destiny release is. There's no reason that Bungie should continue with Destiny 2 after that. Those obligations are met. They don't have something that the article noted that I think is actually great to keep in mind was that Bungie was not the only ones working on Destiny. There were two other satellite studios that worked on different parts of Destiny as we know it, the multiplayer, and then Crucible was partially designed by Bungie and with help from another studio, and then Gambit, the most recent multiplayer mode, was designed by another team. Those teams will obviously not be working on Destiny, so whatever moving forward, the scope will obviously be reduced because Bungie will have to reckon with working on this thing on its own. But I think Destiny 2 players will obviously see a drop in content that they're getting to the point where it'll just slowly wither away, and then they'll have to wait for whatever's coming next. So there's that element of it. And then whatever Destiny 3 or the next Destiny is still up in the air. But it obviously won't be released with the same regularity that Activision was demanding from Bungie, and it won't. I'm wondering if it'll just look completely different. I don't think it will, because it'll still have the Destiny name, but I don't know what 100% Bungie product looks like at this point.
I believe we've lost him.
We've lost him.
While he's jumping back in, I do want to point out, and can you hear us, Cody?
Yeah.
Cool. Can you give us your point one more time? The very last of it.
The last of it was essentially just that I don't know what a 100% Bungie Destiny looks like at this point. So I'm unsure what that will even look like. Yeah.
I think now is a good time to point out that Bungie did have a $100 million investment from NetEase for a non-Destiny game. And this was back in June of last year that Jason Schreier broke this news on Kotaku.
Side comment, it is interesting to note that same company is the one that's developing with Blizzard Diablo Immortal. So they seem to have this weird connection with Activision Associated Studios.
And it also makes you like, okay, there's some Destiny mobile game that's coming,
there's
right?
some. If we were worried about monetary predatory practices before with Activision.
Yeah. So, when it comes to the future of Destiny, though, like, I'm right there with you. And I always feel bad on topics like this where we just all kind of agree with each other. But
just wait till I weigh in and agree the third time.
But I really just like it. I think that there are probably publishers chomping at the bit to get a piece of Destiny. I don't think it makes any sense for a publisher to come in and want to pay for anything Destiny 2 related. So I'm right there with you. That stuff's just gonna fade away. Because I also think there's probably just some legal waters that are going to be difficult to navigate within that. Whereas, go ahead.
I want to insert there too. Like, even if they could find the publisher or whatever, like I just from the get go, I haven't thought anything was going to come of Destiny 2 just because I don't think there's any breathing life into Destiny 2. Like, Destiny 2 is what it is, and it's just best to move on and do the next one as soon as you can.
I do kind of wonder, like, Activision let the Destiny IP go for a song, right? Like, it's positive PR, but it's also just like, if they felt like there was any kind of future within that IP, wouldn't they have fought a little harder to try to keep that in-house and figure out how to spin it from a PR perspective, go into hiding for a couple years, come back out with it? And, like, I think for Activision to have let it go as easily as they let it go, they had to be sitting back thinking, like, the chances of a Destiny 3 coming out and doing even remotely what we would have expectations for are probably low. And you do get a little shot in the arm from the fact that Activision isn't involved anymore, and that's going to get the player base excited. But it makes me wonder, like, will Bungie look at the tea leaves and think, man, we just really should probably focus on whatever our next thing's going to be? And it could be a sci-fi shooter, and maybe it's just a complete reset of this idea of a massive shared world and maybe delivering on the vision of the original Destiny, but not tying it to the Destiny name and expectations and baggage that's there as well. So I do think there's a future where Destiny 3 like just isn't a thing.
I think you're kind of right on Activision letting it go. I could see that. But I also think that it's just, I don't think you could have Destiny without Bungie. I think it's like Konami releasing a Metal Gear without
and they did it.
Kojima. But you had a lot of people who didn't, I don't know. I remember before the game came out.
It wasn't successful. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's possible Activision was just like, yeah, we could cling to this and put it out ourselves, but Destiny is Bungie's game, and I think the fans of Destiny wouldn't even look at it if Bungie wasn't involved. But I can see it going the way that you're saying as well. I don't know.
I think it is worthwhile for Bungie to sit back and reassess what they want to do with Destiny or whatever they put out next. I honestly don't know, like, if I were them, I would be reassessing and looking into possibly doing something more single player focused. And that's not just because that's what I want. It's because that's clearly always a successful thing to do. Especially if you can deliver, like if they can deliver something remotely close to a Halo-like experience. I don't know, like I'm trying to think of other major shared world games out right now. The Division did well, but the Division also wasn't able to sustain a healthy player base over the duration of its time on the market. I am with you. I think obviously Destiny wasn't making money for Activision. We know that pretty much for a fact based on leaked conversations. But I also think there is a world where Destiny could be successful again. Mm-hmm. They might just need to reassess what the core values of that game are. Destiny 3 could look very different, much like God of War. The new God of War looked very different, but still had the base of what made God of War God of War. They might just have to have a lot of internal conversations about what that is and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this is a good thought or a bad thought. And that's why I'm glad I don't have to make decisions about these sorts of things. But one thing I'll be interested to see moving forward is with Destiny 3, without Activision present, will Bungie be willing to maybe experiment in different ways of monetizing it? And will they experiment with a different way of releasing content? Because as we talked about with some other things recently, although we're not calling it that, this is essentially the whole expansion thing, the DLC thing, that the way Destiny's been operating has been more or less the DLC thing. And I wonder if we might see them experiment with some different ways to put the new content out. And I wonder if drawing out the release of new content might bring some more longevity to it, just because you have people, the new content drops, they binge it, and then they're like, there's nothing to do in Destiny for the next 6 months or whatever. But I don't know.
The release schedule will definitely be less intense. From all accounts, that seems like that was Activision pushing it, and that's pretty much uniform across most of their titles, other than the Blizzard stuff. But yeah, I think Destiny players will have to get used to a less regular content schedule if Bungie were to continue with Destiny.
And I was going to say, I think if we're talking about ways they could kind of rework it, it would be more of a drip, So it would be more regular, but they wouldn't be as robust,
They were already not very robust.
I guess that's a good point. I'm thinking more along the lines of like, and forgive me, podcast listeners, but the way that like Fortnite just kind of alters the world, like kind of bit by bit throughout their seasons of content, where it's like we're not talking like, hey, let's drop 5 story missions or whatever within this thing, but like, hey, let's slowly change the universe as we're moving along, like that kind of incremental development that we're starting to see more studios adopt.
And I think that would be really awesome in a shared world, actually.
They did start to do a little bit of this with the most recent, not the most recent expansion, the expansion before the most recent one. What was it, Forsaken? They were starting to experiment a little bit more with this. But again, that takes a team dedicated to doing that. And that sort of stuff was not what Bungie was doing. There was another team that was doing that. So they'd have to have a dedicated, whatever you want to call it, kind of content team to do that, which takes obviously a lot of resources.
But then you got to think about the resources that are saved by the fact that they're not trying to produce expansions that are launching every 3 months as well.
Yeah,
like
it's true.
And then major expansions that are launching every 12 months. because that was one of the biggest points of contention from Bungie back to Activision. So the Activision to Bungie was the money that was being made. Bungie to Activision was the timelines that they were being held to, and this idea that you had to have major expansions releasing annually, like that annualized release schedule, is such a big deal. So the resources that you save when you don't tie yourself to that. I think you can begin to spread those out in more effective ways to start doing more of a drip content. Again, I don't do any development, but I just think logically that makes sense.
Yeah, I just don't know how much value players in a game like that get out of that sort of drip fed content. Like I'm not at least in like loot driven games like that. That are kind of mimicking the format of MMOs, that has a little bit less value than it does in Fortnite, where it's a more concentrated experience.
Yeah. Well, and it's so hard in a game like that to figure out another way to monetize because the loot is part of the gameplay.
Exactly.
Like so you can't sell loot boxes. You can't sell even cosmetic loot boxes, like because the armor and the visuals are so much a part of the grind and the experience. Like, so this is another one of those. There's boardrooms full of people in suits trying to figure out the best way to do this that can't figure it out. And the three of us numbskulls hitting our heads together trying to see if a spark comes out isn't going to do it either.
I've got it. You've got to spend real world money to buy ammo.
There you go.
Nah. Yeah, I don't know what different monetization would look like. But as far as the more of a trickle release schedule, I know that I am not Destiny's target demographic, but as someone who played Destiny more casually, I actually would have loved that because the way the content drops worked, there was a negative for the hardcore players in the sense that they quickly ran out of things to do. And there was a negative for the casual player in that we were quickly overpowered by the people who had a crap ton of time to dedicate to it. So there are upsides and downsides to changing that for both parties as well. But I think the hardcore player, the person that's addicted to Destiny, is more who Bungie wants to rope in than me, the guy who doesn't have time to spend 12 hours a day on it.
Yeah. All right. Cody, what's your topic?
It was a big week for news, obviously, as we've seen. My item is about the news that came out recently that the Division 2, the follow-up to, as I just mentioned, Ubisoft's kind of shared world Tom Clancy game. Division 2 will not be coming to Steam. It'll be launching on the Epic Game Store instead, in addition to the Ubisoft Store for PC. So it's hard to use the word exclusive because it's not technically exclusive. But for all intents and purposes, it is exclusive to Epic Game Store because it's not coming to Steam.
It's not exclusive, it's exclusionary.
Yes, exactly. It's exclusionary. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Mad Gaming, or whatever the fuck you're called. But yeah, it's not particularly complex news, but it is pretty huge news. And so I guess we can go about addressing this in a couple of different ways, but the main way I want to talk about this is this kind of the start of, I called it the storefront wars, because it's not console wars, but is this the start of kind of a major battle between these two? And the answer to that is in a lot of ways yes, but I think it might just be the opening salvo, you could say. So I'm wondering, do you think this year is going to be kind of the start of this war, and how do you think that will impact developers in the industry at large, both in good ways or bad ways?
I do think that it's the start of the storefront wars. And with it being a game as big as The Division, that's really the thing that I think is going to kick it off. I mean, Epic's we've known this storefront was in the works for a while, but them roping in something as big as The Division, I think it is going to be a big deal. And ultimately, I think the competition will be good for developers because, the appeal of Epic is the you as a developer will bring in more money for your game. And at some point, Steam's going to probably have to compete with that. So I do think developers are going to win from this competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the last thing Steam wanted is somebody with as deep of pockets as they have getting into this, and that's exactly what they've got with Epic. Like, Epic can go to these studios and back up a truckload of money, but it almost seems, and going back to when we talked about this a few weeks ago, like, Epic doesn't even have to do that. They just have to promise better margins than Steam, right? Like, and understanding the reach that Epic has as just a company at large, like knowing that you're not going to really lose anything by putting it on this storefront instead of this storefront, and then you're going to gain X amount of percentage and overhead from the sale of it, like, it just becomes a no-brainer, right? And so what I think is interesting about this is that we kind of entered into a little bit of a time in PC gaming where companies were really, like, the major publishers were really wanting to set up their own storefronts. You have the Ubisoft store, you have like the Origin store or whatever it's called. Yeah, Origin. For EA and for Ubisoft. And like, that was kind of the conversation that was happening was, oh man, are we going to have to like have accounts for all of these different stores? Like, we have Battle.net, we got Origin, we have the Ubisoft store, like we have all these different things. Are we going to need this? And now it really is seeming like the fact that Ubisoft backed out of Steam to go somewhere else, and that wasn't just like, hey, if you want to buy this, you got to buy it from the Ubisoft store, I think is like a really big deal, because there's publicity that comes with a move like that. There's confusion that may come with a move like that. And so there's got to be something within the deal with Epic that they saw so advantageous to like to just make that move. And Epic's nursing these relationships probably across the industry as well to come up with more. And I just don't think Steam's really been placing themselves in a position to make similar moves.
No. And it's notable, too, that this is not the only game that Ubisoft will be doing this with. They said in a statement, and I could pull it up.
The Just Dance 2019.
Just Dance 2019.
Epic Game Store. Exclusive.
That always gives me flashbacks to the E3.
Exactly.
Where
But yeah, they do have plans to release other games on the Epic Game Store alone, and in the Ubisoft store as well. So they're obviously seeing something hugely beneficial with partnering with Epic, and the things that are beneficial are somewhat obvious, but also probably hidden to us as just consumers. I just think it's impressive. Like, the Epic, this is not the first. I think this is the biggest win for Epic as a marketplace, but they've been slowly accumulating smaller but still notable titles. Like, I would be, if I had a PC, I would be willing to go onto the Epic Game Store and buy Supergiant Games' new game because it looks awesome, and that's exclusive to that, at least at the moment. It'll obviously come to consoles at some point. And they also have a partnership lined up to get the final episodes of the Walking Dead Telltale game, which is not massive but still has a dedicated fan base, and is scoring them huge points within the industry as well. I think Epic is just making all the right moves right now, and Valve is just either making the wrong moves and also just not making moves at all. I think you're right, Larry. I think it will end up being beneficial for developers. Competition is usually good for people to get a shot at getting their game out there. And I don't think this will be the only marketplace that gets announced this year. I would be surprised if other major publishers and major developers don't start announcing stuff.
Yeah. And I also think it could be great for the consumer if Epic just destroys the Steam store and then Valve has no choice but to give me Left 4 Dead 3.
You can always hope.
Put them so in the poorhouse they have to get back into the software game.
Crap, I guess we have to make
They're
games
going to invest
again.
in Artifact all the way.
I'm sorry, I derailed everything.
No, it's all
with a
right.
joke.
I am curious, who do you guys think will be the next major developer, I should say, to kind of pitch in with Epic. You have to imagine, like you said, Luke, Epic is probably reaching out to all these major developers, trying to get them in bed with them. But who do you think will be the next player to do it?
It's so hard to when you think about it, just because like when you think about the big players when it comes to studios, you think like EA. EA's not going to do it.
No.
You think Rockstar.
Rockstar has no incentive to do that.
Doesn't look like it doesn't seem like a Rockstar move. You have Bethesda, and it's like, is that who you want? Like, and so thinking about this, it's like, and this may be a cop out answer, but if they could get CD Projekt Red and be like Cyberpunk exclusive on the Epic Game Store, fuck you, Steam. That's the tagline.
Yeah, that would be the headline.
Yeah, like I think that would be a major pickup. But outside of that, I just don't see anything that's like realistic. When it comes to big developers.
Yeah, and CD Projekt Red still has its whole GOG thing going on, which sort of complicates. I mean, it only, I think, begrudgingly ended up putting Thronebreaker on Steam after it didn't really sell that well. But that would be a massive. I mean, obviously, that would be a massive get.
Yeah.
It's difficult. I was thinking about this question too. There's no world I could see EA doing this.
Yeah.
Unless those margins are just like...
Yeah, unless they're just so appealing that you have to.
But
because
their games you do have to exclusively buy on the Origin store, right? Like you can't buy an EA game on Steam, I don't think. I may be wrong. You keep talking, I'll look that up.
Yeah, Larry, did you have any ideas?
I didn't. In particular, no. I had a thought, and then the more I thought about it, the more I didn't like the thought. But I'll just vomit the thought since I have no better thoughts. Although I wouldn't see EA jumping in whole hog with this, I would be interested to see if maybe they might test the waters with something like a Titanfall 3, because they obviously don't care about the Titanfall franchise anyway.
That's true.
So why not throw it in there and see how it does?
Yeah, only place to buy Battlefield 5 is Origin.
So, I do think, what's that company that's just been reviving all its dead franchises? It was dead and then it got revived. Was it THQ Nordic?
THQ Nordic, yeah.
I think that would be pretty...
Look, and they're not even just reviving ones that they own. They're literally going out and just purchasing shit that nobody else wants.
Dude, I could totally see a world in which that is the case. Because I don't know how many people are willing to buy some of the games they're reviving.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, I'm racking my brain to think of major developers that could do this, and it's just like...
Although,
I mean, I know we said Rockstar not, but there are other 2K properties that could. Like, if a new BioShock game comes out, new Borderlands game.
Gearbox. That's actually pretty good. Yeah.
Like those could come to it. I think. 2K, like the NBA 2K series.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think if you had asked me this question, I probably wouldn't have called out Ubisoft. Mm-hmm. So it will be interesting to see. Do you guys?
I don't know, dude. Ubisoft's the weird uncle at the party.
It's true. Yeah, their E3 presentations prove that 100%. But do you guys think that another domino will fall this year for Epic? Like someone else will kind of be swayed to them?
Well, hold on. What was your point, Larry?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I thought of a game that could be a good acquisition for them. Because we now know that Fable 4 is coming from Playground Games. And although they're not like I don't think they're a huge player right now, but like Fable 4 is something that people want. And if they could like maybe grab that could be a big get for them.
I did kind of think about that. Like, what is Microsoft's distribution channel for their games? Like, they just have an Xbox store on PC, right?
Yeah, isn't it just Microsoft, like a Microsoft store?
Yeah, it's just tied into their store.
Like, is Microsoft just crazy enough to be like? But I get. Again, it depends on the level of financial incentive that's there, and it wouldn't be every Microsoft game by any means, but I think like Fable would be one of those that would be like, because Microsoft's still publishing that, right?
I'm not positive, and
Because
I forgot.
I think Playground is.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Because Playground is the studio that makes the Forza Horizon series.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like
So that shoots it down.
well,
I'm so bad at keeping who publishes what
no,
straight.
it's shenanigans constantly. But it's also like Microsoft could do something really weird like that, you know. But every PC comes automatically with the Microsoft store, so why would they? So
Yeah, it's true though.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. Do you guys think that someone else will be swayed to them by the end of the year?
I mean, we're going to see little players here and there. I don't think
Yeah,
we're going to
definitely.
step back and I don't think there's like any E3 proportion announcements for people, just because I don't think there are any games that close in the pipeline.
Yeah,
This year.
I do think we'll see the Epic Games Store name on a bunch of E3 presentations, though.
Yeah.
Kind of like how we saw it at Game Awards. It'll be a lot of
Yeah.
small stuff, but I think you will. And that's how you. I mean, building that base is important just as much as getting big games.
And if Epic knows anything, it's that the small games can sometimes be the big landscape transforming
Exactly.
things. So who knows whether one of those small projects might pan out to be something really huge, and that would be great for Epic, for them to have a game that comes out of nowhere and everyone wants it and they can only come to them to
Yeah.
get it.
All right. Great job, guys. Let's move on to our newest game. You probably don't remember this game. All right.
This is another new game?
This is the game from last week. It just has
You
a
didn't
name.
even remember the name of the game that you don't remember.
It didn't
the
have a
of.
name last
Oh,
week.
it didn't? Okay.
I thought the name of the game
I didn't even
was-
remember
oh,
it didn't
okay.
have a name.
All right. I'm so excited about this one, guys. Here's how this game works. I'm gonna give you the name of a game and the description for the game. Each of you has to guess the month and year it came out, what platforms it came out on, and then what its Metacritic score was. All right,
Can you promise me that Larry doesn't know the answer again this time?
Larry, if you know the answer to this,
Oh, interrupt you?
I'll be shocked.
Oh, okay.
No, don't interrupt me. I mean, you win, like, because that's the point of the game. Like, if you know it, then
I'm going to go ahead and offer my guesses.
all right, Larry. All right, here's and the score is tied 2-2 right now. 2-2. Title of this game for this week: Blood Rain Betrayal.
Ooh.
Listen to this description. Blood Rain Betrayal is a 2011 side-scrolling action-adventure game.
You just gave us the year.
Oh, shit.
I'm going to guess 2011
We'll just
for
guess
the
the
year.
month.
Oh, gosh, that was stupid of me. Unlike the previous hack and slash games before it, this game is a 2D side-scroller. All right. So I've ruined the game already. I need to do like I used to do and pull out, because I'm just reading off the page right now. Pull it out and edit it down so I don't do that again. All right, so we know it came out in 2011. Larry, what? Okay, let's just do Metacritic score because it makes no sense. Because you just picked like June and you're close. You know,
Yeah.
you have a 50 chance of being closer. So this game released September 6, 2011 on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. What was the Metacritic score, Larry?
So I'm familiar with Blood Rain,
Are you?
but I wasn't familiar with the fact that they dropped a 2D side scroller. So I'm going to guess 30.
All right. Cody?
I'll go like 45.
It had a Metacritic score of 68. What? let me read these scores to you. From OneUp.com, it got a B+. From Edge, it got an 8. From Game Informer, it got a 7. From IGN, it got a 9. From GameSpot, it got a 5.5.
GameSpot's always harsh, though.
So, all right, I ruined the game this week.
I figured since I hadn't heard of it, it had done terrible. So wow.
I mean, it didn't do great.
I mean,
It's 68.
yeah, you're right.
What is Fallout 76's Metacritic score?
2.
Hold on. Jim Sterling, who at the time was a reviews editor for Destructoid, went so far as putting it on his top 10 worst games of 2011 for its terrible controls and handling and obscene number of enemies thrown at the player. All right. Next week, we come with an edited version of this game where I don't say the name in the middle, and it'll be much more entertaining. But Cody is up 3-2 on the technicality.
I'll take it.
All right.
Redact the information and send it to us so we can think about it, but redact it in such a way that we can still copy and paste it in another window and see the information.
Yes. What it'll be next week is when we're live streaming and I accidentally just keep the screen share up when I when I click on the page. All right, let's get out of here, guys. Larry, who are you? Where can we find you? What are you going to be tweeting about this week?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at Lair Hunts Zombies. And I want to change my username on Twitter, so I might tweet about that. I want to so badly.
He's been
but I'm
saying
so
it for
uncreative.
months.
If you've got a good idea that can incorporate my name into a Twitter handle, you just send that to me.
All right. Cody.
I'm Cody. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectioneer. I'll probably be tweeting about the newly returned True Detective because I just watched the first 2 episodes and I got some thoughts on it.
Yes. Are the first 2 episodes out?
Yeah, they aired the first 2 back to back.
Nice. I was we're an hour and a half, but I do want to say this. I enjoyed season 2
I did not.
of True Detective. I enjoyed it. So
Finally, we get some disagreement on this podcast.
I did not enjoy it as much as season 1, but with those kind of shows, I view them as separate things. Like I'm the same way with like American Horror Story and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Like
even within those
Kinda-
constraints, season 2 is pretty bad.
yeah, well, that's just like your opinion.
It is. It's true.
My wife is on your side. She didn't even finish it with me. So, but all right. I'm Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at Hoagie_OW. I'm just going to be tweeting about Overwatch, guys. That's all I care about in life. All right. Probably just tweeting about the new meta. You can watch my follower numbers just dwindle down. All right.
Nice.
Also follow me at Tales from Gold to listen to me complain about the guy who was playing Brigitte last night, complaining about how we needed a tracer counter, and I was like, "You are the tracer counter." Outside of that, this is PvA Radio. We get together every week. Each of us brings one of the biggest gaming stories in gaming news. Then we have a deep discussion about it. Consider it your collaborative audio feature article, your CAFA, if you will. Until next week, though, we love you guys. Goodbye.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Watch your musical shortwave radio.